Could I please have the number of visas granted, refused, cancelled or reinstated for Palestinian document holders and whether these were done onshore or offshore?
Senator Michael Willard, Group Manager, Immigration Operations. In the period 7th of October 2023 to the period 15th of October 2024, there were 3,041 visas granted to holders of Palestinian travel documents. 126 of those were granted onshore, and the remainder, 2915, were granted offshore.
Let's just drill down on that quickly before I move on. How could someone be granted a visa onshore if they transferred from another visa? They've gone from a tourist visa to another visa, for example? Or
That covers all Palestinian travel document holders. So there was a population onshore prior to the 7th of October, which was around about 900 people.
Right.
So some of them may have applied. Also, what you just described is possible as well.
Okay. So, but the vast majority were granted offshore?
Correct.
How many were refused onshore and offshore?
So for refusals, Senator, I'll provide this by a few different visa categories because one of them goes to less than 5, and if I provide the whole number, it will give away that number. So in total, 7,252 visitor visas were refused, and I'm talking about the same period that I outlined previously, of which 7,248 were refused offshore.
So 4 were refused onshore. Again, just explain to me how someone could have a visa refused onshore.
Similar set of circumstances. It's open to anybody to apply for a visa if they think they meet the criteria. It's then assessed against the relevant criteria, and it's refused if it doesn't meet.
What has happened to those 4 people, given they've had a visa refused onshore?
I don't have that information in front of me.
Does anyone have that information? I mean, presumably given they refused a visa, they no longer have a valid visa to be here, so they would either need to be deported from Australia or taken to detention.
So there's a lot
deportation?
There's a number of circumstances where someone could be refused a visa, where they may still hold a valid visa. For example, they could have a long-term visa and being applying for another visa, which they don't meet, in which case the original visa would remain in effect until.
Okay, and what happened in this instance?
Sorry?
And what happened in this instance?
This is a particular instance.
Yes.
I'm giving you an example of what.
No, I don't
occur.
want an example. I want the specific.
I don't have the specific.
Does anybody here have that?
I don't believe so.
Okay, can you take that on notice, please? But if you can answer this now, that would be good. Were any of those 4 refused for security or character grounds?
No.
Okay.
In addition, so I talked about the visitor visas.
Yep.
In addition, another 45 other migration and temporary visas were refused, in addition to 8 protection visas and less than 5 humanitarian visas.
And how many of those were offshore versus onshore?
Senator, I don't think I have the breakdown on the 45. Protection visas are onshore visas and humanitarian visas are offshore visas.
Okay, could you provide that on notice, whether they were refused offshore and onshore, and if they were refused onshore, what has happened to those people, and if any of those were refused on security or character grounds, unless you can answer that now?
Sure, no, I can't answer that now.
Okay, how many were cancelled onshore and offshore?
Senator Michael Thomas, Group Manager, Immigration and Compliance. 44 people had their visas cancelled offshore, with 21 of those cancellations subsequently revoked.
Yes, I'll come to that.
And less than 5 individuals had their visa cancelled onshore and placed in immigration detention, with 0 of those cancellations revoked.
Okay, so let's just focus on those 5 for a second. So those 5 people have had their visas cancelled onshore and they're now in immigration detention?
It was less than 5, Senator.
Less than 5? Okay.
As you're aware, Senator, the Department's convention...
That's fine.
...to not give numbers below 5.
Yep, you don't need to explain it, Minister.
I'm prepared to say it involves 1.
Okay, all right. Well, that's helpful. I appreciate that. So that one person has had their visa cancelled onshore and is in immigration detention. What were the grounds for that cancellation?
I'll leave it to the Department to determine what level of detail can be provided about that particular case.
Senator, normally we don't talk about individual cases because we're talking one person in this case. It will give away information about the individual.
Yeah, okay. Well,
Senator, can I also just, for context, point out that it's not unprecedented for people who have been granted a visa to come to Australia to then have that visa cancelled because of security information. And in fact, it happened, I understand, on 20 occasions when Mr Dutton was the Minister.
Sure. I'm not. We haven't even got to that yet, Minister.
Just before we start going where I know you're going to go.
We haven't even got there yet, Minister. We can lean on those talking points if and when we get there. So, has this one person whose visa was cancelled onshore, can you tell me whether it was for character or security grounds?
Senator, it was cancelled under Section 501 of the Migration Act.
Okay, explain that in plain language terms for people watching who don't know the provisions of the Migration Act.
So those are the character provisions in the Migration Act.
Okay. So can you shed any further light on what the nature of the cancellation was on character grounds?
No, Senator. Again, it's an individual case, and we won't talk about the details for privacy reasons.
There is enormous public interest in these cases. Ministers have been asked about these matters in question time, and from my recollection, they have previously said that no visas have been cancelled onshore for security or character. So this is a new development of which I think there'll be interest. When was this visa cancelled?
Senator, again, because we're talking about a single case, we won't go into the details.
Okay, but ministers have gone into more detail than you are now in the House of Representatives when answering questions. They've said categorically no visas cancelled onshore for character or security, et cetera, et cetera.
Senator, I can confirm, to the best of my knowledge, everything that ministers have previously said was correct at the point in time that they said that. If what I've just said to you is incorrect, someone will let me know. But
sure, I'm sure they wouldn't have knowingly or intentionally misled the House on that. I'm not suggesting that they are. It seems to me perhaps this has happened since then.
That would probably be a fair assumption, but what I can say is that, to the best of my knowledge, all previous information provided by ministers is accurate.
Okay. Well, Minister, perhaps you could assist. I understand the department's reluctance in doing so, but you've just disclosed more information for the assistance of the committee. If you could assist in providing further information from the Minister's office about this cancellation, I think there'll be genuine interest in what has happened in this case.
Yeah, again, I'm happy to take that on notice. I suspect that my position would be the same as what the department has said, which is that we're unable to give details about an individual case. Noting again, this is not unprecedented and occurred while Mr Dutton was the Minister for Home Affairs.
Sure. And that's why I'd like to know as much as we can about this. It may well be that this person's visa was cancelled because of something they did after they came to Australia. And if that's the case, well then no minister could be held responsible for knowing what someone would do when they got here. If that's the explanation, the government should provide it. Or it might be that more information came to light about their character that wasn't available when they applied. Whatever the reason is, I think it would be helpful to put that on the public record so Australians can have confidence.
I'm happy to disclose whatever is appropriate to do so, noting both the privacy and the security issues involved here. But as we've also said previously, I'm not trying to say that it was information that was new and came to light or about something that happened onshore. I actually don't know the answer to that. What I do know, and we've said before, is that we continually are updated, or agencies are continually updated about individuals.
Sure.
And should information come to light, whether it's something that happened while the person was onshore or before they got here, then the appropriate action is taken.
Yeah, well, whatever the reason is, I think the public would be interested to know, given the interest in this program and the controversy around it. Okay, so you said they were in immigration detention. That's obviously pending their removal.
Yes, Senator.
What steps need to occur now before they can be removed from Australia?
Senator, I can talk in a general sense about the steps to enable someone's removal.
Yep.
Again, I won't comment on the individual case, but their individual circumstances will be assessed and where they are in the migration process to determine how and if and when they can be removed. They may wish to depart voluntarily, for example, to a country that they have a right of entry to, or they may not want to, but those processes will be ongoing.
Minister Burke has publicly said that Australia can't send anyone back to Gaza, given the circumstances on the ground. Does that mean that this person in detention has another place they can be removed to?
Senator, again, I won't talk about the individual case, but it will be a discussion with the person to understand which countries they do have a right of entry to and where they might wish to depart to or be returned to.
Because if the minister is right and if they can't be sent back to Gaza, then couldn't this potentially trigger the NZYQ provisions on indefinite detention? There has to be a reasonable prospect that they can be removed under the High Court's decision. What is the reasonable prospect for this person to be removed?
And so, Senator, we'd be, again, going into details of an individual, but speculating on a situation which we have not yet exhausted.
Okay. Well, I look forward to what further information you could provide on notice, because otherwise, if this person can't be removed and if the NZYQ obligations are triggered, then they would have to be released into the community, wouldn't they?
Senator, we'd be speculating about that. We don't know the circumstances
Well, it's not speculation
yet.
to apply the High Court's reasoning to someone's circumstances. If they can't be removed, they have to be released from immigration detention. That's
Senator,
right, isn't it?
That's a statement of fact. That's
Correct,
general.
and that's all I'm asking for officials to agree to, that statement of fact.
But we're not, shedding any
relating
light
that.
on the implications of that for this individual.
Sure.
There's clearly a lot more work that has got to occur before any decisions can be made. But the person is in detention.
Okay, all right. So just going back to those numbers, it was 44 that were cancelled offshore.
Yes, correct.
How many of that 44 or this additional person have been subject to an adverse security assessment or a qualified security assessment from ASIO?
Senator, ASA's adverse security assessments are a matter for ASIO, and that question will need to be directed
Well,
to
they
them.
provide them to the department. It's one of the criteria you would use to cancel a visa if you received it. So how many ASAs or QSAs have you received?
Again, Senator, the number of ASAs is a matter for ASIO.
Why can't you provide that? You're in possession of this information. You need to provide it unless you have a valid reason not to provide it. Saying again that it's a matter for ASIO is not grounds under the Senate's resolutions to refuse to answer a question. You have to make a public interest immunity claim.
I will need to take it on notice so I can discuss with ASIO what information we can provide.
Okay.
Senator Patterson, just one more question.
Thank you.
I'll hand the call around.
All right, so the last was the reinstated. 21 were reinstated, you said?
Yes, that's correct, of the offshore cancellations.
So what was the reason for them being reinstated?
Generally, Senator, further information was provided to the department to resolve any concerns or issues, and the cancellation was subsequently revoked.
And they've then come to Australia, presumably?
Not all of them, Senator.
Right, how many of them have come to Australia?
15 of those individuals then subsequently came to Australia.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Change this issue of the cancelled visa onshore. I got a question on notice back from the department which said, as at 18 September 2024, so just a little bit over a month ago, no Palestinians who have arrived in Australia since 7 October have had their visa cancelled on character grounds. So am I to assume that that answer was accurate and this person's visa has been cancelled since the 18th of September, or is there a need to update that answer?
No, that answer is accurate, Senator.
Okay, so it's a recent cancellation then?
Senator, I think that factually stands.
If that's the case, just say so.
So
Yes,
it has
would be the
occurred.
answer.
It has occurred since the 18th.